Abusuya Ghana Mampani, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the new African Union chairperson and our chairman, and Abusuya Warbeya, Eha, Accra International Conference Center, and Diaspora Summit 2025. I Diomdiato so a resetting Ghana, the diaspora as the 17th region, and a Koso Ewahasina, Ghana Mampani Ebaya. Na unim sɛ wɔyɛ obi a wɔno na champion sɛ Africa ha nyinaa yɛnka ho mum ɛnyɛ ɔman baako na Africa ni biara ma ne ho so obetumi akɔ baabi a obiara nsi ne kwan ɛno akyi nso no sikɔkɔɔ ɔhaw a wɔde ɛfa mu wabra na wɔn fa yɛn nkoa ɛde wɔn kɔ wɔn aman so ɛkɔ develop wɔn man nyinaa no ɛbra so sɛ wɔn ɛhyɛ yɛn mu wɔn compensate yɛn na bibiara wɔn de yɛn ɛfa mu no wɔn etua so ka ɛno nti ɛnam so ama ɛnɛda yi no Africa for yɛde wɔn nananom ne mpanimfoɔ ahodoɔ ɛfa saa kwan so nyinaa abɛhyia mu wɔ ha yɛdwendwen kwan yɛbɛtumi afa so na yɛtumi execute saa project ɛno nti ɛna ama Ghana Mampani ne Togo Mampani His Excellency Faure Gnassingbé wɔn abɛhyia mu wɔ ha na atitiriw bebree free Africa abɛhyia mu na dwumadie no ɛkɔ so na busua ha Ghana News TV so no wani go ahwɛ no mɛsrɛ sɛ ne ndi kan aba ahwɛ me a na subscribe na wahyɛ de ama me. Abusuya lemfai ama bronya abanta momoden download lemfai se sia se wo send this card ba o my Ghana mu na wa download lemfai na wo America, Canada, USA, yeah America no Europe anase Germany no wo send this card if you anase UK eba o my Ghana mu ya de a rating was super sanso na enche no nipa nsaka na bomodian download lemfai na ebo news ehim na wo mo bonus wo download ya na o send your first $50 and €50 and £50 no wo mo bonus sika and sign in your account.
Welcome to this place where mother pushes out had enough birth water and they chose to call the Atlantic. Thank you for coming to this place where enough birth water shot us out to corners of the world they never thought we could hold, and enough birth water bringing us back to the wombs of mother to be born again. We are a people whose birth cords were cut on nomadic whetstones. My elders I did not forget to greet. It is simply because when a child is called before his elders, he dare not name names or call titles, lest he misses one and be made to pay a fine. And so I take the back of my slipper. Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, our elders, revered greybeards, backs without which we have no front, tongues without which we have no song, fires without which we would not have to cook our bath water and boil the herbs to heal our wounds, to even cook our food and share around this ring of mother that gather at the center. I salute you all. I remain a child learning the ropes of the world and the ways of my people. I have learned that truly the burdens of a great vision weigh the shoulders of the mind, but we have been born in good times, for we are the unfettered voices our ancestors wished to have, and be that cocktail they wished would go down their throats into memory and lend the strength of hope. Yet we are those people they called nomads with no place to dwell. But mind you, the world could not count our steps, and so they chose to call it dance. Welcome to this place where dance was born. Welcome to this place where we do not beat our palms anymore, but we beat our chests because our chests are as good as a drum as any animal skin could ever be. That is the warrior's call. Ago, ago, ago. Are we all not children of one womb from different corners summoned to the center? Your seat was meant for you. It is by no mistake that you are here. My people, sleep is for the strong. And so one man went to sleep, woke the entire clan, and we showed up. It is still midnight, and so I choose to wear black on the day when we celebrate the power of our victory. For darkness is the only backdrop against which light can be seen. They call us the dark continent, but please, we are all the gold the world could ever have. For our gold is not stashed in the earth, it's not stashed in votes, it is stashed in the great minds that we have received from our ancestors. My people, my mission is simple. It is on the ends of old ropes that new ones are woven. And so, when a man is sure of his footing, he dares life to bring on its worst. Blood and toil of our fathers, the sweat of our mothers. Welcome to this place where we offer green, some freshness, and some good breath. And so when we beat our drums, it is not for war this time, my people. When we beat our drums, it is a summoning of the entire clan. Show up and make sure your name is heard. Make sure and ensure that you pass this rhythm down to generations yet to enter the thought of time, that a time in history came where we took an about turn and said that we will be Alpha, call us Omega, call us whichever label. We cannot be suppressed. Can we have another discussion for another day? We are waiting for trained hands of leadership. We choose to call midwives who will place us in fantastic incubators, call it leadership, who will take us to that promised land. This is the promised land. My people, welcome home. And so when a man is guilty of something that is wrong, we name his name and then we beat it on the gongs. When one is guilty of something great, my people, it is only proper that we name and hail. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the center of the world. I came with respect to the Creator, with respect to our kings, to name a man who has rallied all of us and said, come, let us reason together and take our destinies into our own hands. Thank you for the work you have done. Your Excellency, pardon me to come down. I come down because I am simply a child who is learning the steps of our elders. Of what use is a son who cannot interpret his own father's dance? And a child is not held in contempt for calling his father's oath out of 10. Your Excellency, when a king sits in a palanquin and throws his hands about and it remains on the ground, he is simply lying to himself and tickling himself with all the dreams he hopes to have. But when his people go on their knees and they pick him up, when he throws his hands about, beats them on his chest, shows them up to heaven, he is truly master of all that he surveys. Out of palanquins and skins, you choose not to have either. Your Excellency, I do not reduce your rank. The world is here. And they are willing to listen to the dream you had that made you summon the clan, and everybody has shown up. If you rise gently, may earth receive you in good stead. Your Excellency, when you take your first steps, let it be history. For it is the most difficult thing, my people, placing one foot in front of the other. That is the only way the old woman will conquer the summits of the mountain. Your Excellency, the world is ready to listen. Tell them something about Sonyo, and then tell them something about St. James they might never have thought about. Tell them the Atlantic is now a playground where we trade fantastic ideas. We are no longer bound by fetters on our hands or even on our minds. And so it's a bead and a watch. My people, it's about time we rub our culture in the face of the world. It says we are one big body that cannot be broken by shackles, by language, by metals. A good matter is short. This one has yet to start from the beginning. Your Excellency, until you rise, I will not leave. And when you rise, I will lead you gently to the place where you will offer word and the world will listen. I wait, sir. Please hold your place. Do not sit until first word is broken.
Thank you. Thank you. Kindly be seated. Thank you. Thank you, Nana Sasi. Let me ask you a question, not as president, but as a student of history. Have you ever wondered why the story of Ghana never included the story of the diaspora? When telling the story of Ghana, many are inclined to begin in 1821 with the formation of the British-ruled Gold Coast colony. But that's inaccurate, because the collective story of our people, the many ethnic groups that populate this country, Ghana, predates the existence of any colony on this African continent. Similarly, when speaking of the transatlantic slave trade, specifically the atrocities that took place on this soil, many are inclined to end our story on the shores of this nation, where our ancestors, and I do mean that word literally because they were our blood and bone that were forced onto ships and transported across the Atlantic. But why do these events that follow cease to be part of Ghana's story also? Between the 16th and 19th centuries, nearly 13 million African men, women, and children were captured and transported on ships through the Middle Passage. Over 2 million of them died, some because of the harsh conditions, and others because of disease. But there were also those who chose to end it all by jumping overboard. And there were also the ships that sank in storms on the Atlantic, taking with them our forebears who were shackled and chained limb to limb, turning the Gulf of Guinea and the waters of the Atlantic beyond it into a graveyard of our ancestors. Ghana contains more slave forts and castles than any other nation on the African continent. Indeed, over 70 of them, with many still intact, but there are others that lie in ruins today. People who were captured in other areas of the sub-region were marched on foot to one of the forts or castles on Ghana's coast, where they were kept, usually in dungeons, until it was time for them to be loaded as cargo onto ships. Given all this, it will be safe to assume that a significant percentage of the enslaved people, even if they did not originate from the area that is now called Ghana, passed through it on their way to the slave destinations. What followed for each and every one of those individuals is as much a part of Ghana's story as what followed for us who remained firmly rooted here on our soil, but were subjugated and rendered second-class citizens nonetheless through colonization. As Kendrick says, bear with me for a second and let me put you on the game. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to land on our shores. They began the practice of extraction of gold, copper, ivory, chili peppers, and then eventually they moved on to the extraction of human beings. It was the Portuguese who gave the River Volta its name. Volta in Portuguese means to return. They used the River Volta as a kind of boundary. It was the farthest they could travel Once there, they had to turn around and begin their return. The Portuguese, who were superb shipwrights and navigators, therefore called Volta do Mar, which literally translates as return from the sea, but can also be taken as a turn of the sea. With Volta do Mar, they reversed the course of their ships, using the winds from the currents created by the North Atlantic gyre to carry them faster without encountering rough waters. The point at which the river Volta empties into the Gulf of Guinea is part of the Atlantic Ocean. It is called the estuary of the Volta at Adamfuan.
Warriors here, this is gungulum 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 gung. This is Ghana News TV. The time is 6 o'clock. Let me follow Ghana.
So send this cafe amanoni ab Africa ha. You selem fight. Say ye fear wo pese won tono. You selem fight. E dan ya na say japade a wani da so a pese oto Africa ha no. You selem fight. So wo send this sika amodofo e de aboa no Africa ha. You selem fight. Sanso e na say uti obi school fees amano a. You selem fight. Nyenti a me kanfo lem fight ama on say utimi send this sika e fa lem fight so a e ma ni begu bank account mu. Sanso e na timi begu mobile money account mu. Eno achi nso no de bia lemfi e wo daily rate a e ma hu sika dodo a wo send a wo benya lemfi e secured na wo send this car enche na nipa wo send ama no ne nsa aka lemfi wo USA, Canada, UK, Italy, Germany, Ireland, Netherlands, Spain, Belgium, Portugal and France. What the lemfi send this car untu ahwe bomodi a dey use me code NEWS news na say any day di kan register or lemfi so a unya bonus sanso and how you use chance so a ye wo bonuses ahodo a ye de ma.
For those of you who have not yet had the pleasure of visiting Adan, it is a small coastal town a little over 100 kilometers away from Accra. I've spent some of my most peaceful moments there. I've enjoyed the tranquil river until where it meets the choppy, aggressive waters of the Atlantic Ocean. For years, I did not know the history of these two bodies of water. When I found out, I was stunned. And every time I think about it, I'm still shaken by the cruel irony that even as our people who were enslaved were being forced to walk through the door of no return, their captors had already ensured their own safe return and even memorialized their method of achieving it by lending its name to a river. The Ghanaian American author Ya Jesse wrote in her novel, Homegoing, "We believe the one who has power. He's the one who gets to write the story. So when you study history, you must ask yourself, whose story am I missing? Whose voice was suppressed? So that this voice can come forth. Once you have figured that out, you must find that story too as part of the narrative. By finding and owning the stories of our past, the ones that have been suppressed, we're able to truly know ourselves. And with that knowledge of self comes the power to write ourselves truthfully, respectfully, into not only our future, but the future of all humanity. And that is why we're gathered here today at this Diaspora Summit, to begin the process of reclamation in earnest, to begin the process of writing our own story and moving full steam ahead. That's right. We're reclaiming everything that was ours. Your Excellency Faure Gnassingbé Chairman of the Council of the Republic of Togo, Your Royal Majesties, our traditional leaders, the Chairman of the Council of State, our senior government officials, members of the diplomatic corps, our brothers and sisters from our 17th region, the African diaspora, I say a very warm welcome to you. Welcome home. This is your home. The reason I believe it is important that we begin to consciously carry the story of the diaspora as part and parcel of Ghana's story is because what divides us ultimately, what denies us the ability to be whole, is that division. And that's precisely why it's the perfect way to conquer. We have to stop drawing those lines of demarcation that say, I end here and you begin there. I look into the audience and I can see myself in so many of your faces. And I'm sure that I'll be able to see my children in the faces of your children. And so how can I turn my back on the fact that we are undeniably, inextricably parts of each other? And yet, we have been divided with artificial borders of colonialism that split ethnic homelands right down the middle, with half of our communities being ruled by one European country and the other half being ruled by another. And with the labeling of our ethnicity in a colony as intellectual and worthy of education, while another ethnicity was said to be inherently martial and thus intellectually inferior. We've been divided by the manufacturing of coups, armed conflicts, anti-poverty programs that somehow never eradicate poverty, by the selective broadcast of stereotypes, a systemic war of images waged against us, images meant to foster fear and engender self-hatred and portrayal of Africans as primitive savages whose low cognitive ability makes them incapable of self-determination, and Black people in the Americas as lazy, drug-addled, and criminally inclined. And there too is the institutionalization of colorism. The belief that anything Black is negative or inferior, and the proximity to whiteness is more desirable. It is reflected in every aspect of our lives. And I say us because colonization did not leave us unscathed, quite the opposite. In English, everything negative and evil is Black. In Spanish, la negra means Black woman. Tener la negra means to have bad luck or to be jinxed. A once popular French expression that went out of vogue but has recently been making a comeback is travailler comme un nègre. Travailler comme un nègre, which means to work like a slave. And it's often also translated with the word slave being replaced by a more offensive racial slur. But anything in this life, once stripped of its power, will no longer work. And that is true of slurs, it is true of stories, especially ones that are complete fabrications. Let's take the narrative of those who oppressed us and work it. In fact, let's take their entire modus operandi and flip it and reverse it. And so I urge you, my brothers and sisters, let's be more intentional about our unity than they were about our division. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, our brothers and sisters from the 17th region of Ghana, it will not be a difficult goal to achieve. No matter how we've been divided, we've always tried to find our way back to one another. Africans in the diaspora whose forebears were enslaved have kept us in their rhythms. The music they play, the dances, the cadence of their speech, and even the language. The Gula Geechee people of the United States still count using Fulani words instead of numerals. Yoruba language is spoken in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Brazil, Haiti, and Trinidad and Tobago. Likewise, a Creole offspring of Akan is spoken by the Africans, the Maroons, in Jamaica and in Suriname. And Africa remains in our food. America gumbo and Brazilian karuru bear a strong resemblance to Ghanaian okro stew. All three use okro, also known as okra, which is native to the African continent and was transported to the New World on slave ships, as were cowpeas. We call it gobe here in Ghana for those of you. Try and eat gobe before you go back. Another food item that is native to Africa, which would explain why some variations of Hopping John, a dish from the Gula Geechee people, are so reminiscent of the Ghanaian wache. Try to eat wache too before you go. The ways in which Africa has remained at the heart of its diaspora are far-reaching, well beyond food and music. Perhaps the most important way is in the cultural elements that are taught to our children, ensuring the cord that has tethered these diasporan communities to the African continent all these centuries remains unbroken. There are the Kwekua Nancy folk tales that so many of us in this room grew up hearing and reading, and that have spread all over the world to places too numerous to mention. Just like the popular children's call and response folk song that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Cheche Kule, Cheche Kofisa, Kofisa Langa, Kakati Langa, Kum Adede, Kum Adede. I didn't hear you go. Cheche Kule, Cheche Kule, Kofisa Langa, Kofisa Langa, Lalati Langa, Kum Adede. Thank you. First President Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said, and that quote has been shown here, "I'm not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me." Though I have no proof, I suspect that this sentiment was heavily influenced by his time in America, where he completed his undergraduate studies at Lincoln University and his graduate studies at the University of Pennsylvania. He was also a frequent visitor to Harlem, and this was in the late 1930s and 1940s, at a time when most Ghanaian intellectuals were completing their higher education in European universities. During his 8 years in the United States, Nkrumah was able to experience at first hand racism and the Jim Crow laws. Nkrumah was already a believer in Pan-Africanism before he went to the United States. He was a huge fan of Marcus Garvey, whose Black Star Line was an attempt to facilitate movements between North America and Africa, particularly Liberia, where free blacks had been emigrating since the 1820s. The Black Star, which is featured prominently on Ghana's flag, has come to be a defining part of our national identity. It underscored his rallying cry, which was the unity of all African peoples. He wanted the story of the diaspora and the stories of all the other indigenous people who had been colonized on the African continent to be a part of our national story. So much so that at the hour of Ghana's independence, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah famously proclaimed that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. It was a heady and ambitious statement, and the years that followed were equally as heady and ambitious, full of growth, infrastructural development, and the building of alliances between other newly independent African nations. There was a sense of hope. No, it was more than that. It was an intoxicating feeling of endless possibilities. It was a pure, perhaps naive belief that we could attain our own modern-day version of the glory that our forebears like Shaka the Zulu and Mansa Musa had, and that we could build our nation-states to be as exemplary as the Mwene Mutepa Empire, Songhai, Mali, and the Ghana empires that had existed before. And then came the coup d'etats, many inspired by the imperial nations, not just in Ghana, but in most of the other nations that had newly gained independence. And then came even more coup d'etats, one after the other, following by the imprisonment and exile of our liberation leaders. We now know as Ghanaians, as author Ama Ataidu wrote, that there are powerful forces undermining our progress in Africa. We suffered decades of brain drain that emptied a sizable portion of the continent's population, adding scores of exiles to the diaspora. And our nations themselves were surviving, but barely, on the remittances that those individuals sent home. It will surprise you to know, in 1990, the total number of Africans who had migrated voluntarily to the United States eclipsed the total number who had been brought as enslaved people to leaving an utterly devastated continent. When it comes to reparative justice, we ask what is just. We're at a very pivotal place in our journey. There are those who will have us go backward, not just 1 or 2 steps, as if that would not be bad enough. They want us to go all the way back. They want us to develop some sort of amnesia about the blood that was spilled, the lives that were lost, and the years that were sacrificed in order to fight for our freedom. We are at a place in our journey where we do not have the luxury of forgetting. When government officials can so easily use the words like garbage and filth to describe our kith and kin, when they can refer to our countries as shitholes, when they can indiscriminately strip people who look like us of citizenship that they have earned, we do not have the luxury of forgetting or of either excusing the racist dog whistles or explaining the overtly discriminatory and divisive statements that are made daily to our hearing. This is precisely the time when we must advance and begin the process of reclamation. This is precisely the time when we must speak loudly and clearly, naming what it is we have lost as well as what it is we hope to gain. Her Excellency Mian Amon Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, a great African sister, said in a lecture at the London School of Economics, "The conspiracy of silence has diminished the horror of what our people faced." This year, at the UN General Assembly, I served notice that Ghana will move a motion next year to recognize the transatlantic slave trade as the greatest crime against humanity. I know this motion will enjoy the utmost support from the entire African continent and the diaspora. Africa has suffered slavery, colonialism, genocide, and apartheid. We demand acknowledgement of these crimes against humanity. We demand the establishment of legal, institutional, and international mechanisms to advance reparative justice. Reparations must include tangible measures such as debt cancellation, monetary compensation, return of stolen artifacts, institutional reform, and transformative economic redress in the global economic system. Beyond the material loss that Africa suffered are also the emotional cost to assess. According to the Oxford Dictionary, epigenetics is the study of changes in organisms that are caused by the modification of gene expression rather than the alteration of the genetic code itself. And studies have shown that trauma can be passed down transgenerationally through epigenetics. And so imagine then the various traumas that the people of African descent have faced, traumas that are being passed down from one generation onto the other, traumas from yesteryears coupled with traumas of today and the injustices that we are currently facing. What impact does that have on our health? What impact does that have on the health of our children? And most importantly, how do we heal from that trauma? Ghanaian British actress, writer Michelle Cole wrote, "We can put fear of the future in front of us to block us, or put it behind us to drive us forward." As you debate all these questions and ideas, bear in mind that the future is upon us and that the future is African. And like I said at the UN, let me say it louder one more time for those in the back. The future is African. We hold in our hands the power to change the circumstances of our past. but we must be more intentional about our unity than those who oppressed us were about our division. And from the looks of this gathering, I can feel it, that we are more united than ever. And with a united Africa and diaspora, there is nothing we cannot achieve. I thank you. I wish you fruitful deliberations, and it's my honor and privilege to declare the Diaspora Summit 2025 duly opened. Thank you.
My brothers and sisters, if you could lower your volume just at 2:45 kindly, we return to this main hall for our sessions, our panel discussions, while, of course, His Excellency National Anthem of the Republic of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana Police Band, please wait, kindly, please wait, pause, please wait. Excellency will move to his seat before we give.
Everybody right. Let's
So send this cafe amanoni aba Africa ha uselem fi say ye fear wo pese wo nto no uselem fi edan ana say japade a wani da so a wo pese wo to Africa ha no uselem fi say wo send this sika ama odofo e de aboa no wo Africa ha uselem fi sanso e na say wo tie obi school fees ama no a uselem fi nyenti American full lem fi ama on say utimi send this sika e fa lem fi so a e ma ne begu bank account mu sanso e na timi begu mobile money account mu eno achi nso no de bia lemfi e wo daily rate a e ma hu sika dodo a wo send a wo benya lemfi e secured na wo send this car enche na nipa wo send ama no ne nsaka lemfi wo USA Canada UK Italy Germany Ireland Netherlands Spain Belgium Portugal and France wo de lemfi send this car untu ahwe bomodi a dey use me code NEWS news na say ene any day di kan o register o lemfi so a unya bonus sanso e na use chenso a ye wo bonuses ahodo a ye de ma
menu makwekwe sa sempa kania se menam na meti asempa no ma mo amane a na ma no keka me anyam bia what ANS Trading Agency Limited nka se wo ka se door to door for no de na e watwa e sense obi ne wa wo se wo wo sa door to door business nim wo nneoma wo UK a wo de ko Ghana ana se Germany a wo de ko Ghana 3 to 5 weeks e be kwa kodu nipa ne puna no se try na de mo demonstration wo se adwuma de we mu ne se wo mo bo no e da form se boko ANS Trading Agency Limited e wo air freight special service and nneoma ne ye de be fa plane entintempa na akwa kodu obetima fa sa kwa we ya so de nneoma free Ghana akwa UK ana Germany FGG dem which na also agina ye na men drop bomb ANS Trading Agency Limited pe and a 40 footer any 20 footer container ya fe UK ediko Ghana ana Germany ediko Ghana omo manuoma ye mere import o export o dem there for you omo Ghana na money 0249 170 423 UK has over free 0790 802 7527 Germany 09173 771 2733 Ubenya ANS Trading Agency Limited our West Croydon ANS Trading Agency Limited Quantum Brantem Wana Beboya Basso Mary next time in your fill up from the Bebro.